Hello everyone, and welcome to the December edition of Let's Talk Criterion. I'm currently working on the Look Back special, which will go up just after Christmas, and I'll be looking back over the entire year at the US and the UK releases by Criterion, including of course the exciting announcement of the 4K titles a few months ago. Now we start by mentioning the unfortunate slip-up made in the production of the Citizen Kian 4K Digipack set. This was announced for release in November, but due to a production error, the Blu-ray disc image on disc 1 changed clarity just after 30 minutes into the film. Now many people were unable to purchase the title through the Barnes & Noble sale as it was 50% off in November. Barnes & Noble recalled their copies, but Amazon and some other online retail orders did manage to ship, and since the problem has occurred, Criterion have of course offered a free disc replacement service, and at the time of recording, purchasers are being asked to return their disc by post or just simply destroy it and take a picture of the disc and email it to Criterion with the return postal address as proof of purchase. Now yet again it proves that quality control is ultimately struggling to check the many production titles for any mastering defects. Now this could be due to the sheer volume from studios, or indeed there just may be a staff shortage. Now I'll soon be receiving my replacement copy, and I'll have the defective Blu-ray inside that, but of course I'm not really bothered too much because it's the 4K disc I really want to see, and I'm sure it won't disappoint me. And also, despite the doubting on the cover art and general packaging design for Citizen Kian, I'm pleased with what I've seen online so far from pictures, and I'll be comparing the UK set coming out very shortly from Warner Brothers to the Criterion set. Now it looks like Criterion have moved over to Digipack with their 4K releases, and you can see behind me Uncut Gems and Menace to Society have all got the Digipack treatment. So it's not always popular with collectors, that type of packaging, but it looks like that's how it's just going to be going forward with the 4Ks. Now there are 4 releases across the US and UK this month from Criterion, and we start here in the UK with the UK release of the Jean-Pierre Melville classic called Le Samourai. Made in 1967, it stars Alain Delon. He plays professional hitman Jeff Costello, who's seen by witnesses, and his efforts to provide himself with an alibi that drive him further into a corner. The film stars Alain Delon, François Perrier, Nathalie Delon and Cathy Rosier, and impassive hitman Jeff Costello lives in a single-room Paris apartment whose Spartan furnishings include a small bird in a cage. Costello's methodical modus operandi involves creating airtight alibis, including ones provided by his lover Kian, played by Nathalie Delon. After carrying out a contract on a nightclub owner, Jeff is seen leaving the club by several witnesses, including the club's piano player Valérie, played by Cathy Rosier. Now their testimonies are contradictory, but after rounding up numerous suspects, including Jeff, the superintendent, François Perrier, firmly believes that Costello is the culprit. The film was released on the 25th of October 1967, receiving positive reviews with praise for Melville's screenwriting and direction, and Delon's performance and atmosphere. Now the film grossed over 1.9 million admissions in France. Jean-Pierre Melville had had a well-established career up to that point, including Silence de la Mer, his collaboration with Jean Cocteau on Les Enfants Terribles, Bob Le Frambert, Magnet of Doom and Le Deuxième Souffle. And at this point he was on the cusp of producing Army of Shadows and Le Cercle Rouge, hailed by many as 2 of his greatest films. Melville wrote the film for Delon, and this was the first film also for Delon's wife Nathalie Delon. Now he filed for divorce after the film ended in production, and it became official in February of 1969, and she was granted custody of their son Anthony. François Perrier, who played the police inspector, was a comedian who was cast against type. Melville's private film studio, Studio Genet, was destroyed by fire while the Samourai was actually shooting early in July '67. And Melville, who termed the blaze as suspicious, moved the whole production to another studio. The film was ranked number 39 in the UK film magazine Empire's The 100 Best Films of World Cinema in 2010. Le Samourai has been popular with Criterion fans since it first entered the collection, and now we get the same release here in the UK. The features on the disc are interviews from 2005 with Rui Nogueira, that's editor of Melville on Melville, and Jeanette Vendonceau, author of Jean-Pierre Melville, An American in Paris. Archival interviews with Melville and actors Alain Delon, François Perrier, Nathalie Delon and Cathy Rosier. Melville Delon Donneur et de Nuit. That's 2011, a short documentary exploring the friendship between the director and the actor and their iconic collaboration on the film. And an essay by the film scholar David Thompson, an appreciation by filmmaker John Woo, and excerpts from Melville on Melville. Now, the film remains an elegantly stylized masterpiece of cool by maverick director Jean-Pierre Melville. Le Samourai is a razor-sharp cocktail of 1940s American gangster cinema and 1960s French pop culture, with a liberal dose of Japanese lone warrior mythology just thrown in for good measure. Now, this was released in the UK on Blu-ray on Monday, December 6th, and it's Spine 306. One Night in Miami was adapted from the Kemp Powers stage play. It's a feature directorial debut of Academy Award-winning actor Regina King, and it puts viewers in a room with four icons at the forefront of Black American culture as they carouse, clash, bare their souls and grapple with their places within the sweeping change of civil rights. February 25th, 1964 has gone down in history as the day that the brash young boxer Muhammad Ali, then known of course as Cassius Clay, defeated Sonny Liston. But what happened after the fight was perhaps even more incredible. Ali, civil rights leader Malcolm X, NFL great Jim Brown, and King of Soul Sam Cooke all came together at a Miami motel. Electric with big ideas and activist spirit, One Night in Miami plunges us into the midst of an intimate, ongoing conversation and a defining moment in American history. Now, this film hit the limelight earlier this year because of its Oscar nominations. Best Supporting Actor Leslie Odom Jr., Kemp Powers for Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Song by Leslie Odom Jr. and Sam Ashworth. It didn't win any Oscars, unfortunately, and nor did it win any Golden Globes, seeming not to be the right time for this film. One Night in Miami premiered at the Venice Film Festival September 7th, 2020, a first for an African-American female director. The film was released in limited theatres by Amazon Studios on December 25th, 2020, before being released digitally on streaming in Amazon Prime Video on January 15th, 2021. The film was reported by critics not to be able to fully escape its play-based roots, but it looked a very interesting period of history nonetheless, and the meeting of some charismatic national heroes of the time. Regina King, of course, won an Oscar in 2019 for Best Supporting Actress in Barry Jenkins' feature If Beale Street Could Talk, and you could say she was under even more scrutiny with this feature, but this time, of course, as the director. Criterion brings this film to Blu-ray quicker than we would normally have expected it, but it's most welcome. Now, the features on the disc are a new conversation between King and filmmaker Cassie Lemons, new conversation among King, screenwriter Kemp Powers, and critic Gil Robertson. Conversation between King and filmmaker Barry Jenkins, the episode of The Director's Cut, that's a DGA podcast. New programme featuring King and actors Kingsley Ben-Adir, Eli Goree, Aldous Hodge and Leslie Odom Jr. A new programme on the making of the film featuring King, Powers, director of photography Tammy Riker, editor Tariq Anwar, producer Jody Klein, costume designer Francine Jameson Tunchuk and set decorator Janessa Hitzman. New programme on the film's sound design featuring sound editor and mixer Andy Hay, sound mixer Paul Ledford and music producer Nick Baxter, and a written essay by the critic Gene Seymour. One Night in Miami releases in the US on Tuesday, December 7th, and in the UK on Monday, December 20th, and it's spine number 1106. Our next release is the Gordon Parks film The Learning Tree. Made in 1969, this 107-minute film follows the journey of Newt Winger. Now that's a teenage descendant of exodusters, growing up in rural Kansas in the 1920s. As he experiences the bittersweet flowering of first love, finds his relationship with a close friend tested, and navigates the injustices embedded within racist legal and educational systems. Exquisitely capturing the bucolic splendour of its setting, this landmark film tempers nostalgia with an incisive understanding of the harsh realities, hard-won lessons and often wrenching moral choices that shape the road to self-determination of the young black man at its centre. With this tender and clear-eyed coming-of-age odyssey, the renowned photographer turned filmmaker Gordon Parks not only became the first black American director to make a Hollywood studio film, he also served as writer, producer and composer, resulting in a deeply personal artistic achievement. And it was based on Parks's own semi-autobiographical novel. Parks personally chose Kyle Johnson to play the character of Newt, after a brief meeting he had with him in a Beverly Hills hotel. However, during the meeting he gave no inclination that he wanted to cast him, but Johnson kept getting called back for screen tests, and after the fourth screen test he found out he'd already been cast, and the screen tests were actually meant to gauge the abilities of the other actors, not him. Not surprisingly, Johnson characterised the audition process overall as not normal. In 1879, many African Americans migrated to Kansas and they became known as the Exodusters, and among those who travelled were the ancestors of Gordon Parks. His father, Andrew Jackson Parks, was a tenant farmer in Kansas. The Learning Tree was shot in location in Fort Scott, Kansas in the fall of 1968, and the production process was scheduled to take 3 months. Fort Scott had been where Parks had actually grew up, and it was also the basis for the fictional town of Cherokee Flats. Parks is remembered for following his instincts while he was filming, and for also encouraging his actors to do the same. Now this ease while filming probably contributed to the fact that scenes were shot in very few takes. And he also, of course, composed the score himself. The Learning Tree juxtaposes the lives of Newt Winger and Marcus Savage, two former friends that are trying to find themselves in a white-dominated Midwestern society. Though these two young men have different personalities and different goals in life, both characters express two examples of black manhood. Now let's look at the features on this release, which are also interesting. There's a new documentary on the making of the film and its artistry, featuring curator Rhea L. Combs and filmmakers Ina Diane Archer, Ernest R. Dickinson and Nelson George. A new conversation, moderated by film scholar Michael B. Gillespie, between the artist Hank Willis Thomas and the art historian Deborah Willis, about the influence of the director Gordon Parks. The Movie Makers, as a featurette showing Parks on location for the film. My Father, Gordon Parks, 1969. That's a documentary made on the set of The Learning Tree, narrated by Gordon Parks Jr. and featuring interviews with Gordon Parks Sr. and members of the cast and crew. Diary of a Harlem Family and The World of Perry Thomas. That's two 1968 films in which Parks played creative roles, with an introduction by Combs and George. And a 1963 Life magazine photo essay by Parks, and an excerpt from the director's 2005 book, A Hungry Heart, a Memoir. And the new cover is by La Moutique. The Learning Tree releases on Tuesday, December 14th in the US only, as Spine 1107. Now our final release for December is another 4K, but the title already is in the collection, but excitement is mounting at the 4K debut for the Technicolor splendour that is The Red Shoes. Directed in 1948 by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger as a directing team, their impressive body of work makes it very hard to judge a best film, with titles like The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, Black Narcissus and A Matter of Life and Death, all in the Criterion collection, along with many of Powell's own singular features. The Red Shoes is a singular fantasia from Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger and is hailed by many as cinema's quintessential backstage drama, as well as one of the most glorious technicolor feasts ever concocted for the screen. Maurice Shearer is a rising star ballerina torn between an idealistic composer and a ruthless impresario intent on absolute perfection. Featuring outstanding performances, blazingly beautiful cinematography by Jack Cardiff, Oscar-winning sets and music, and an unforgettable, hallucinatory central dance sequence, this beloved classic, dazzlingly restored, stands as an enthralling tribute to the life of an artist. The Red Shoes was restored by the UCLA Film and Television Archive in association with the BFI, the Film Foundation, ITV Global Entertainment Limited and Janus Films. Restoration funding provided was by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the Film Foundation and the Louis B. Mayer Foundation. Now, The Red Shoes was filmmaking team Powell and Pressburger's 10th collaboration and a follow-up to 1947's Black Narcissus. It had originally been conceived by Powell and producer Alexander Korda in the 1930s, from whom the duo purchased the rights in 1946. Now, the majority of the cast were in fact professional dancers, and filming of The Red Shoes took place in mid-1946, primarily in France and in England. Upon its release, The Red Shoes received critical acclaim, especially from the United States, where it received a total of 5 Academy Award nominations, those being and winning Best Original Score and Best Art Direction, and it also won the Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score and was named as one of the top 10 films of the year by the National Board of Review. Now, a central theme to The Red Shoes is a performer's conflict between their art and personal life. Now, commenting on this theme, Powell himself stated that the film is about dying for art, that art is worth dying for. Filming of The Red Shoes took place primarily in Paris, with principal photography beginning in June 1947. Jack Cardiff, who had shot Powell and Pressburger's previous film, Black Narcissus, served as cinematographer. The shooting schedule ran approximately 15 weeks and had a budget of £300,000. Filming also occurred on location in London, Monte Carlo and the Côte d'Azur, and some sequences were filmed at Pinewood Studios, including the stage and orchestra pit sequences, which were sets constructed specifically for the film. The part of Victoria Page was played by Scottish ballerina Maurice Shearer. Now, she was recommended by Robert Helpman, who had been cast in the film as Ivan Boleszowski and was also appointed the choreographer of the central ballet sequence. Helpman had worked with Shearer prior in a production of his ballet called Miracle in the Gorbals, and at the time Shearer was beginning to ascend in her career with the Sadler's Wells Dance Company, dancing under Ninette Ledoillois. Now, she originally declined the offer in case it would negatively impact on her own dancing career, but clearly that was far from the truth, and this film catapulted filmmakers Powell and Pressburger to stratospheric heights as British directors. The Red Shoes is restored in 4K with Dolby Vision HDR, and it comes to 4K UHD Blu-ray, and if you haven't got it in your collection now, this will definitely be the time to purchase. The features on the disc are the restoration demonstration featuring filmmaker Martin Scorsese, audio commentary from 1994 by the film historian Ian Christie, featuring interviews with actors Marius Goring and Maurice Shearer, cinematographer Jack Cardiff, composer Brian Eastdale and Scorsese. A profile of The Red Shoes, that's a 2000 documentary on the making of the film, featuring interviews with members of the production team. Interview with director Michael Powell's widow, editor Thelma Schoonmaker Powell, from the 2009 Cannes Film Festival. Audio recordings of actor Jeremy Irons, reading excerpts from Powell and screenwriter Emmerich Pressburger's novelisation of The Red Shoes and the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale The Red Shoes. Publicity stills and behind-the-scenes photos. A gallery of memorabilia from Scorsese's personal collection, and The Red Shoes Sketches. That's a 1948 animated film of Hein Heckrock's painted storyboards, with The Red Shoes Ballet as an alternate angle. There's a trailer and a written essay by the critic David Ehrenstein and a description of the restoration by UCLA film archivist Robert Gitt. The Red Shoes releases on 4K UHD on Criterion in the US only on Tuesday, December 14th as a dual format Digipack, already available separately as a Blu-ray, both as Spine 44. So that's it for the current releases with Criterion, and having now announced their planned releases until the start of March, we can certainly look forward to an interesting selection greeting us in 2022. And we begin that selection in January with Festen, or The Celebration from Thomas Vinterberg, a Danish director, Time by Garrett Bradley, the first Beatles feature film to hit 4K, that's A Hard Day's Night, directed by Richard Lester, Kirsten Johnson looking at life if her father was gone in Dick Johnson is Dead, and the 4K debut of Jane Campion's Cannes Palme d'Or winning film The Piano with Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin. And we have a look back at the whole of 2021 in Criterion coming up after Christmas, where I'll be looking through every month at the releases and picking my favourite release from that month. I tell you, that has been a very, very difficult choice, as well as a retrospective of the French director Jacques Tati. So look out for all of that coming up on the channel. And very exciting, I'm also working on a new idea coming to you early next year, but I'll tell you more about that in 2022. So it just remains to me to say Happy Christmas to everybody who's subscribed to me on my channel, and happy seasonal viewing. See you soon.